if you buy our sort of solar subscription or solar rental, there's no money down, and you instantly save on your utility bill, and there's no long-term contract.
Right.
So it's kind of a no-brainer. It's really, do you want something that prints money? And if it doesn't print money, we'll fix it or take it back. It's kind of a no-brainer. And it sort of plays into Tesla's overarching strategy here, which is effectively to become like a giant distributed global utility.
Hi, I'm Matt Smith, and this is Spark Spread. Critics of Tesla point to declining installations since the time of the SolarCity acquisition as proof that the merger was an ill-advised bailout, and that Tesla Energy's strategy has been chaotic. And looking at the data, they seem to have a point. Yet Elon Musk has consistently expressed confidence that Tesla Energy would grow at a faster rate than the automotive business, and eventually be roughly the same size as Tesla's car business. And this is despite the fact that he expects automotive deliveries to grow at an absurd 50% per year on average over the next decade. So how can Tesla Energy possibly grow more quickly than 50% per year? And what exactly does Elon mean when he envisions Tesla as a giant distributed global utility? I could spend hours talking about the full answers to these questions, but for now we're going to try to establish a baseline of where Tesla Energy is today, the current state of the energy industry, and how Tesla's plans could fit into this broader picture. It took me a long time to try to piece this story together, and I'm very excited to share my view of this overlooked part of the Tesla strategy. Let's get into it. To set the stage on how the electricity industry is currently structured, let's look at a simplified version of the centralized electricity generation model. Historically, very large power plants were built when new electric supply was needed. This energy was transmitted over long distances through high voltage transmission lines and ultimately delivered to customers through the lower voltage distribution system. So at a high level, the consumer is paying costs both for the production of electricity, or generation as it's called in the industry, as well as for its transportation, or transmission and distribution. Now let's try to get a baseline of how much the consumer ends up paying for these services via utility, so that we can see how Tesla's solar offerings stack up. The average cost of utility electricity generation in the United States is 3.75 cents per kilowatt hour, and the transmission and distribution charges are another 8.75 cents. So the average consumer ends up paying the utility 12.5 cents per kilowatt hour. Depending on the electric rate structure of your local utility, you probably pay for various fees and fixed charges on top of these energy charges. By contrast, the average cost of energy for someone installing Tesla Solar in a sunny location like California could be as low as 2.5 cents per kilowatt hour, or just a fraction of the utility rate. Adding in power walls, or installing these in a less sunny region, will increase this net cost, but in many cases, Tesla Solar will be much cheaper than utility-provided electricity. If a consumer wants to install solar on their home, this is called a behind-the-meter energy resource, since it is literally installed behind their electric meter. Unlike a centralized coal or natural gas plant, residential solar does not have any fuel costs, nor does it have transmission or distribution costs. With these advantages, solar is actually competitive with, or in many cases better than, utility rates, and Tesla's solar is the lowest cost option out there. Tesla's ruthless commitment to driving out inefficiencies, which many of you are aware of on the automotive manufacturing side, is also at play when it comes to solar. Tesla has automated much of the permitting process, while also standardizing solar sizes in order to limit the costs and complexities of custom solar installations. But Tesla's biggest advantage on the solar side is on customer acquisition cost. As you can see, solar installer Sunrun incurs installation costs that are approximately 1/3 higher per watt of capacity installed than Tesla. On top of that, Tesla does not do any marketing, and you may be surprised to know how big of a cost that can be in the solar business. Tesla's brand awareness and ability to cross-sell energy products with its booming vehicle sales gives Tesla Energy a unique advantage that allows it to undercut competitors' pricing, while still remaining profitable. Some solar installers still use costly and inefficient door-to-door marketing techniques, while Tesla simply bypasses this expense altogether. Interestingly, Tesla's cost advantage in solar is not known or understood by most professionals in the energy space. Once I ran the numbers, I was personally surprised by Tesla's cost lead, and one of the most prominent energy investors and podcasters out there, Jigar Shah, was similarly unaware of how far Tesla's cost-cutting efforts had come in the last year. So if rooftop solar is so much cheaper than utility rates, and if Tesla has the cheapest solar costs, it would seem to follow that we should expect rampant growth from Tesla Energy, and for customers to be kissing their utility bills goodbye forever. Well, the reality is much more complicated. We've all heard it said that we can't rely on solar and wind all the time because the sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow. But on top of that physical constraint, there are critically important regulatory constraints which limit the activities in which Tesla can participate. These regulations vary drastically by country and even by region or city. In Germany, for example, the energy market is highly unregulated, so Tesla could actually sell electricity directly to consumers, and appears to be planning to do so. Tesla is doing something similar with a partner, Octopus Energy, in the UK, where there is a special Tesla Energy tariff. In the US and most other Western countries, however, utility monopoly rules restrict Tesla to selling only hardware to a customer. Direct sales of physical electricity are not allowed by any company other than the local utility. Residential customers who have rooftop solar are similarly subject to regulatory restrictions, which can vary drastically by jurisdiction. One common regulatory structure is net metering. Under a net metering structure, all the electricity produced by the solar panels is netted against the home's usage each month. This is a simple approach and one that is great for customers. However, it essentially allows a customer to be paid their full retail rate for generation, including distribution and transmission charges. In net metering, residential customers essentially use the grid as a battery. It gives you electricity when your panels aren't producing, and takes away your excess production when the solar resource is greater than your household needs. That's why, in my opinion, net metering is not a scalable solution. If everyone had net metering, each consumer would be getting paid for the wires that carry electricity away from their house when they don't need it, which, if you think about it, is really a service that residential customers should be paying for, not the other way around. So if net metering is not a scalable option, the next best choice is to send your excess solar production to a battery to offset your consumption later. By having the battery, you can also optimize the timing of your electricity usage. You can purchase any needed electricity from the grid during the lowest cost periods according to your local electric tariff, and you can avoid purchases from the grid during high-priced periods by discharging the battery. This use of a battery is called load shifting, and it helps to minimize costs a consumer bears, while also benefiting the grid by reducing demand during periods of peak usage. So, in my opinion, the obvious path forward for Tesla Energy is to pursue low-cost solar and storage options. By driving down the cost of the hardware they are legally allowed to sell to customers today, Tesla can scale up hardware sales simply by providing such a compelling product. This strategy should allow for significant growth in both residential and commercial solar and storage deployments. But the product I'm most excited for in all of Tesla's portfolio is the Solar Roof. This product, while expensive at first glance, delivers a truly remarkable amount of value for customers who need to pay for a new roof anyway. Rather than thinking of a solar roof as a typical consumer product, it really is best to think of it in terms of a financial instrument, which also comes with a host of side benefits. I have done the math on installing a solar roof plus Powerwalls at my own house in Michigan and found that it has over a 10% internal rate of return. This makes the investment in this product a better use of capital than investing in a diversified stock fund. On top of that, it gives me the ancillary benefit of powering my home and EV directly with renewable energy, and it provides backup power via Powerwalls in the event of an outage in my neighborhood. I believe this will be a massively successful product for Tesla and will be the primary driver of their solar deployments in the years to come. Elon has stated a goal of producing and installing 10,000 to 20,000 solar roofs per week in the long term. Running some back-of-the-envelope numbers, 20,000 roofs per week at an average cost of $30,000 gets annual revenue of $31 billion. We've also completely ignored traditional solar panels and the commercial and utility scale solar piece so far. So for simplicity, let's assume that's approximately the same size as residential. So now we're at about $60 billion per year. That's certainly a lot of revenue, but if we fast forward to the year 2030 and assume that Tesla is reasonably close to achieving its automotive growth targets, the auto business should be close to $500 billion in revenue per year by that time. Tesla's solar revenue is just over 1/10 that amount. So for energy to grow to a comparable size as auto, there must be something else. And this is where the new details we learned at Battery Day come in. Tesla's goal by 2030 is to have in-house cell manufacturing capacity of 3 terawatt-hours per year. By that time, we also know that Tesla is aiming to produce 20 million vehicles per year. Assuming an average 75 kilowatt-hour battery pack per vehicle, that translates to automotive cell requirements of 1.5 terawatt-hours per year. meaning that the other 1.5 terawatt hours of Tesla's planned 3 terawatt hours must be for stationary storage energy applications. Today, Tesla's cheapest storage option on a dollar per kilowatt hour basis is the utility scale Megapack, which is priced at around $300 per kilowatt hour, including supporting electronics and installation costs. By contrast, the much smaller Powerwall is currently priced at $519 per kilowatt hour. We can use these two products to establish a range of battery pricing and thereby hone in on an average revenue per unit of storage delivered. Looking ahead over the next decade, it's safe to assume that Tesla will seek to drive these prices down. The latest plans from Tesla revealed at Battery Day indicate that current cell cost should decrease by 50% with the developments Tesla unveiled. However, cell costs are only around 1/3 of the total cost of a Megapack today, and 1/5 of the cost of a Powerwall. So, in addition to planned improvements in cell manufacturing cost, Tesla will need to make improvements on the racking, supporting components, and installation process if they want to move the needle on customer pricing. Assuming they can do so by about 5% per year, and that the current average price per kilowatt hour of stationary storage is $400, then by 2030, Tesla would be selling these products at an average price of $240 per kilowatt hour. Selling 1.5 terawatt hours of storage at this price generates an astronomical $360 billion per year in revenue. This implies that the combined business would be just shy of a staggering $1 trillion in sales, and that is excluding the potential from robo-taxis. This is the path forward that I believe Tesla is quietly working to achieve. Just like in automotive, it starts with great hardware, but there is a Trojan horse of high margin revenue which will be built on the back of this hardware. Tesla's intended market for this storage is not entirely clear. For example, allocating 3 Powerwalls with each solar roof would only allocate about 44 gigawatt hours of storage capacity, or 0.04 terawatt hours of Tesla's 1.5 terawatt hour target. We also know that Tesla has a massive backlog of utility-scale PowerPack and Megapack orders. We recently learned that this backlog currently stretches out to 2023. Once supply constraints are eased, it's very likely that Tesla could see a huge increase in utility-scale deployments. However, in 2019, Tesla only deployed about 6 gigawatt hours of storage. So even assuming a 100x increase by 2030, that would still be only about 0.6 terawatt hours of utility-scale storage. So the question remains, what is the plan for all this capacity? I have a pet theory that future stationary storage products will be drastically larger than they are today, meaning that a Powerwall could store enough electricity for a few weeks of outage at a time, rather than the few days you could get from the current product. If true, and done at a cost-effective scale, this would allow consumers to more perfectly match their supply and demand, and could potentially ensure that effectively all of a home's electricity needs could be met without utility generation in some cases. Assuming, for ease of calculation, that a Powerwall was sized about 10 times higher, this would imply Powerwall demand of about 0.5 terawatt hours, and now we're in spitting distance of Tesla's total planned capacity. The other and potentially more plausible theory, in my opinion, is that Tesla is planning to manufacture battery cells or packs for sale to other auto OEMs. This has been a topic of speculation by Tesla bulls for many years, but with Tesla's lead in battery cost and performance only seeming to accelerate, it does seem possible that this excess capacity could be allocated to other auto manufacturers. If this theory is true, then Tesla Energy would take much longer to reach the same scale as the automotive business. But the fact remains that Elon Musk believes both the energy and automotive sectors will need roughly 10 terawatt hours of annual capacity in the long term. Tesla appears to be headed down that path, expecting at least a 30% market share in both business sectors. The exact timing of when the two businesses would hit the same size might be as soon as 2030, but if I had to guess, I would say it will likely be closer to 2040. Up to this point, we have been primarily talking about revenues. But can the energy business ever generate a similar level of profitability as automotive? Tesla currently generates single-digit gross margins on its energy products. The price cuts we are expecting in order to stimulate such massive levels of demand will only make achieving high margins that much harder. But Elon has a well-known love for manufacturing, which he has called Tesla's long-term competitive advantage. Additional streamlining of the installation process should help improve margins further. Perhaps Tesla could succeed at doubling gross margins or possibly doing even better than that. But here, I think it's prudent to take a slight detour to revisit the story of Tesla's automotive manufacturing ramp-up. On the automotive side, Tesla has been relentlessly scaling production to get a massive amount of vehicles in the hands of its customers. It was able to achieve this scale by delivering so much value with their core hardware product. Autopilot and FSD were glitchy and not a core selling point for many people in the early days of their development. But with this strategy, Tesla essentially got paid by its customers for them to train its self-driving neural net. Now this software component is priced at $10,000 and rising, and will likely be a huge cash cow for the company in the years to come. You might be thinking, what does any of this have to do with Tesla Energy? Well, I believe Tesla will have a similar opportunity on the energy side. By providing solar costs lower than anyone else and delivering outstanding customer value via Solar Roof, Powerwalls, PowerPack, and Megapack, Tesla will be able to scale their hardware deployments rapidly. As we've just discussed, I believe the decline we've seen in solar deployments will reverse and accelerate rapidly, as installation crews are hired and trained, and capacity bottlenecks are eased with vastly greater in-house production. If Elon's ambitions to scale are realized, Tesla could be responsible for more than 40 gigawatts of capacity from Solar Roof alone in the next decade. This is an amount of electricity generation which is on par with the world's largest utilities, and it would be growing at a much faster rate than traditional utilities. However, Tesla will offer more than simply large-scale solar generation. Many homes will also have power walls and EV charging, which can be turned on and off as needed to provide maximum flexibility and value to the grid. The thing to keep in mind about energy assets is that they are typically long-lived, meaning they are designed to be used for 2 or 3 decades rather than the 2 or 3 years you might get out of your iPhone. And that means that Tesla's rapidly growing hardware sales, when looked at cumulatively, represent a truly massive platform for high-margin energy-as-a-service sales in the long term. As you can see, increasing deployments of hardware lead to a massive deployed base of solar and storage assets. This base of assets can then receive compensation for services provided to the grid. In addition to pure generation of electricity, Tesla's hardware is also capable of providing ancillary services such as capacity, frequency regulation, reactive power, load shifting, and many others. Utilities are paid by grid operators for these services today, subject to their availability within each regional regulatory structure. If Tesla is able to manage and optimize a fleet of energy assets at this size, Tesla can start to add profitability from services typically reserved for utilities. This would be a recurring stream of super high margin revenue. Before we get too excited, remember that these assets will be owned by Tesla's customers, not by Tesla itself. So how can Tesla get a slice of the pie? Here, it's important to remember that the grid and the business models of its key players were developed in an era of centralized generation. But the path we've outlined here is of many smaller generating assets, which are spread across thousands or even millions of different points along the grid. This new model is distributed, in contrast to centralized systems, and in energy speak, assets such as rooftop solar are referred to as distributed energy resources, or DERs. But right now, it is simply too cumbersome to pay residential customers for the benefits their home solar and battery systems can offer, so they simply aren't integrated into the grid in most cases. But many companies are increasingly starting to aggregate these DERs. If thousands of pieces of hardware can be combined into one virtual power plant, which can, in aggregate, act like the normal centralized power model, then residential customers can finally get access to the wholesale energy markets. And any company which can act as the aggregator and bridge the gap between the current grid design and the millions of pieces of hardware would certainly be in line for a slice of that pie, most likely by sharing the profits with the hardware owners. Tesla is in many ways the perfect distributed energy resource aggregator. As we've shown so far, Tesla aims to have a massive scale of generating capacity, stationary storage, and consumption of electricity via EV charging. Tesla can use AutoBidder and other solutions to optimize the millions of decisions which must be made by individual pieces of hardware in order to provide serious value to the grid while also respecting the consumer's needs. It is important to emphasize that none of this will be easy. Solving the technology problems is one challenge, but I cannot underscore enough how much regulations matter to Tesla's ability to participate in energy markets. Historically, it has been difficult or impossible for residential customers to get paid for grid benefits like capacity, reactive power, frequency regulation, or many other services these assets can provide to the grid. But with Tesla aggregating these resources together and offering them into regional markets, I believe the company will eventually be successful and at a staggering scale. A landmark new federal order will accelerate that regulatory change in the United States, and Tesla is already trying out unique energy business models in the UK, Germany, and Australia. The exact figures and timing I've outlined at a high level here will almost certainly be off in some way. We also haven't gone in depth on the commercial and utility scale opportunities, which will continue to grow as well. But it does seem clear to me that instead of large, centralized power plants, Tesla will help shift the grid to decentralized or distributed energy resources. Tesla will have the ability to aggregate these resources and use software to control when our vehicles or power walls are charging or discharging. Future products like a home HVAC system will expand the scope of electricity usage, which Tesla can have a hand in managing. By offering a whole ecosystem for electricity generation, storage, and consumption, all integrated together and controlled by software, Tesla will be in a unique position to offer value to the grid.
And that is what I believe Elon means when he says he wants to turn Tesla into a giant distributed global utility.
Your support will go a long way toward determining how quickly we can get unique videos like this out to you all. I have a lot more content in the hopper, including detailed analyses, some of the parts valuation of each Tesla business line, interviews, and a lot more. I also have some unique benefits for Patreon supporters, including early access to my Tesla earnings forecasts, which I got accurate down to the penny in Q3. Other benefits include customized sensitivity analyses or other individualized offerings. Let me know in the comments if you have any suggestions of benefits that you'd like to see. Also, a huge thank you to Jordan Gorzalski for his help with the visuals and editing on this video. If you'd like Jordan to be paid more than dinner and beer for his help on this channel, please hit like and subscribe or support us on Patreon. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Matt Smith, and this is Spark Spread.